Big news out of Canada today that Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, has decided he will resign. Granted, it's in a few months, but he's stepping down as Prime Minister and getting out of the way, preempting essentially his own party and the country doing it for him. But today, what I want to do and what I've done is I always think about these world events in the context of how they impact me, honestly, and for the point of this channel, how they impact the Dominican Republic, real estate in the Dominican Republic, the economy here, so on and so forth. And I'll make this statement. I believe that Justin Trudeau's resignation is a very positive sign for the future economic growth and the future growth of the Dominican Republic. In fact, I'll go even further and say that his resignation is correlated to what I see an even bigger real estate boom over the next 2 to 3 years before things maybe start to cool down. Big, bold statement, I know. And I'm going to dig into this. I'm going to do this unedited. It's early morning as I record this. I'm about to go to the gym. And I just wanted to get on and riff a bit about where I am, my thoughts on this, and then get your thoughts, get your comments and everything else. I don't know everything about this situation with Justin Trudeau. I'm not Canadian. But, I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Now, look, let me be clear. Justin Trudeau to Dominican Republic prosperity, there's not a direct link. But here's where it's really, really interesting. There's two movements in the world. There's what's known as the establishment, which right now is aligned with like globalism. So the establishment is like your long-seated, deep state sort of always been there politicians. Joe Biden is associated with the establishment. Kamala Harris was associated with the establishment. Justin Trudeau is associated with the establishment. And there's so many others in the world that are. And the world has moved toward this anti-establishment sort of populist bend, if you will. Populism being sort of for the good of the common folk. Like, let's lower taxes. Let's not kill people with it. Let's get some government regulation out of the way. Shrink the size of government. Let people do their thing. That's what you're seeing with Donald Trump, with Milei, with the guy in El Salvador whose name is escaping me right now. These are populist leaders. And populism is taken over, or started to take over. There's a wave of populism going across the world. And the current populism doesn't have to be conservative or liberal or whatever, but the current form of populism, or the current drive with populism is around border security. It's around shrinking the size of government. It's around putting more power back in the hands of the people, which is popular. Therefore, the term is populist. Trudeau stepping down, to me, is not like the biggest news, but I believe it is a sign of just how powerful the populist movement is. I mean, Trump was elected in a populist move, got the majority of the, he got the majority, it's early morning, my words aren't with me just yet, but he got the majority. He got most of the votes in the country. That's the majority. There was a red wave, a wave of populism swept through the election in the United States. Then the whole thing with, Trudeau and Canada becoming the 51st state and all of that stuff, the unpopularity of Trudeau, and now he's stepping aside. Granted, he's stepping aside in a way that like suspends the government for like the next 3 months. It's a weird, it's a bit of a power play in him stepping aside. But the fact that he's stepping aside is, to me, a clear sign that the world is craving smaller government, lower taxes, border security. So if that's the case, what I do is I overlay that movement, that world movement, with what's happening in the Dominican Republic. What is the current President Abinader stance? Is he populist? Is he more establishment? And how might this movement impact the prosperity, the growth, the development of the Dominican Republic? Now, here's my take. Most of what you see coming out of Abinader, rhetoric and execution in some ways, is more populist. He's also got some establishment tendencies. He's got some globalist tendencies. However, he's more populist. And here's a few things that indicate that. One, there have been 276,000 Haitians deported in 2024 around this whole border security immigration push that his government has had. Now, that number is accelerating, or had accelerated throughout 2024. I think in Q4, there were 90,000 Haitians deported. And if you go back to the prior quarters, it was a little bit less, a little bit less, a little bit less. So it accelerated over the course of the year. And now, just you could see it. And people I talk to, developers or whatever, they feel it. Like there is a major push around the deportation of Haitians. Now, look, this isn't about whether every Haitian should go, whether there should be a little bit more, I don't know, process around people that are here, they're working, they're contributing to society, they have kids in school, they're you know, whatever. Like there's certain people that probably should not be deported that maybe are being deported. No doubt. And this isn't about whether it's racist or whatever. I'm not getting into that. My point is his stance on the border is populist. It aligns with the populist movement that's sweeping the world. He recently announced that his goal is to shutter 8 different departments in government, aligning the Dominican Republic more with where it is versus maybe a country that's more developed. So in other words, the size and scope of government right now are more aligned with a more developed nation. His goal is to shrink it down to where the Dominican Republic truly is in their quest to be a fully developed nation. And if he executes that, or even just the rhetoric, is populist. Even going back to the reform bill, some of you may have watched videos I did about he put out this reform bill. I didn't think it was going to pass. I said as much in a video, and then for sure, a week later, he withdrew the reform bill under a lot of pressure from the people. And it was celebrated widely that he heard the people and you know, he killed the reform bill. And he's going back to the drawing board, which again, the idea that he did it at the will of the people is populist. He heard the people. I also said that, you know, he's a savvy salesman and he understands that putting out the worst form of a bill, getting people riled up, and then allowing them to kill it allows him now to repropose what he really wants. But be that as it may. The point is, those are all populist-aligned actions by the current President Abinader. So if he's on the wave of populism, you add in the fact that the Dominican Republic is in a very unique place in its history, inasmuch as it is closest to being a developed nation that it's ever been. It's on a trend toward being a developed nation more than it's ever been in its history. Nobody's going to argue that. And things like the Open Skies Agreement that was signed, you're seeing now more routes, more air routes from the United States here, from Canada here with airlines like Aerojet. People say like, oh, Spirit's going out of business. No, Spirit went bankrupt, but they're just repositioning and they're still in business. So you're not losing any low-cost carriers, and you're actually gaining one with Aerojet, as well as additional routes that can be put in place because of this Open Skies Agreement. So you look at that agreement. You look at the Dominican Republic's history of taking advantage of the tourism boom, taking advantage of the CAFTA-DR agreement, the Central America Free Trade Agreement with DR and the United States. When you look at the Dominican Republic's ability to adapt and adjust to movements in the last, say, 10 to 20 years and take full advantage of it, all of these things add up to, you've got a populist movement worldwide, taking out, you know, a well-known world leader in a very developed nation in Canada. You've got a country in the Dominican Republic that's aligning around populist tendencies for the most part, and that is uniquely positioned and has had significant progress in things like open skies and things like semiconductor development or movement toward being a semiconductor player in the world. And all of a sudden you start to look at like, wow, the dynamic for the Dominican Republic is like they're plugged in to the right outlet, if you will, for the time that we're in. And for the next 2 years, as the U.S. goes through the Trump administration before the midterms, and we'll see what he does over the first 2 years. If he does all that he says he will, secure the border, lower taxes, shut government, or shrink the size of government. If he does all of those things, and Canada falls in line with that, and North America in general, Canada, the U.S., maybe Mexico, although this is where I think there's another advantage to the Dominican Republic in that if there's an outlier that's fighting against the U.S. now, it's more Mexico. Canada and the U.S. are about to get very aligned. Trudeau being out of the way, the Conservative Party leader likely coming into play in Canada, aligning with Trump, those two countries are about to get very aligned. Mexico's still sort of like battling the U.S. on this. We'll see if they decide to get in line, if you will. But the Dominican Republic isn't like, oh, we're all about Trump or anything like that, but they're populist, they're near shore. The U.S. is, I think, 40% of all trade for the Dominican Republic, so there's a lot of aligned interests there. The DR is going to get in line. And when you look at the North American continent overall, I think most of you know this, there is 100% independence in all facets if North America wanted to be. there's enough oil, there's enough potash, there's enough food supply to never have to go anywhere else but North America. Between the U.S., Canada, Mexico, Dominican Republic, and countries like it in the North American quadrant, if you will, there is everything that we need as North Americans. We don't need to go anywhere. We don't need to buy oil from anywhere else. We don't need to buy food from anywhere. We can be completely independent if we wanted to be. So there's a big movement toward populism. The Dominican Republic is on that movement. Is the president currently is more populist than he is establishment. There's movements in the right direction around things like semiconductor, tourism, things that people embrace and want in North America. I'm going to say this. The projection is, I think, between 5 and 7% increase in value of real estate over the next 12 to 24 months. That's out there. I'm going to say that in developed spots, this is like Punta Cana, probably neighborhoods in Santo Domingo, maybe some of the North Shore communities, Las Terrenas, Miches, you're probably going to see more like 15% increase in values over the next couple of years. Now, many of you are going to say, oh my God, this guy, like, you just pump in real estate, you probably get paid for it. And look, if you use one of the realtors that I refer you, yeah, I do. I get a percentage of the commission if you decide to work with them, completely up to you, and if you decide to close with them. But let me be clear, every boom has a bust. So I don't know where the bust is, and who knows, this is absent some weird black swan event that happens next month or 6 months from now or a year from now. Like, anything could take down the world economy. But absent that, I'm calling it a run of another 1 or 2 years. And then you're going to see, I think, some cooling. I think you'll see a correction. I think you'll see whatever the top is come down a little bit. Now, I still think that wherever it falls to is higher than where it is today. So if you start at 10,000 and it goes to 30,000 and it drops down to 20,000, it's like, oh my God, it's tanking. But it's like, yeah, but it's still higher than where it is today, unless you bought at 30,000. So I see a run of economic prosperity for the Dominican Republic. The only risk to this, and I don't see this being very real, the only risk to this is with populism comes nationalism. And I don't think nationalism is a bad thing on its face. It's, making sure that your country, whatever country you live in, takes care of its own. But with nationalism can come sort of a regression from trade. So if the United States, for instance, decided, hey, yeah, we want to get semiconductors development away from China, out of Taiwan, but we want to bring it here to the United States. They don't want to nearshore, they want to do it in the United States. That would hurt the Dominican Republic. If the US and Canada decided between them that they're going to bring manufacturing back, that would hurt a country like Dominican Republic, Mexico, so on and so forth. So if there's a major move toward nationalism, where like literally they don't want to nearshore, they want to bring it right in-house, that can hurt the Dominican Republic. I just don't think that's very likely, considering the cost of labor, and you've got a president now who's more of a free market economist. So he's going to look for, all right, where are the strategic partnerships around the region that we can leverage to get it away from China, because that's a big play for him, but also ensure that that costs stay low. So the Dominican Republic, again, is uniquely positioned in this regard. And I don't think anybody would argue that over the last 10, 12 years, DR has put themselves in a position to be the most developed they've ever been, and on a track to being a fully developed nation, which is insane. 20 years away, maybe, something like that, on its current trajectory. Maybe it's hastened with some of the movement here. And again, DR has a lot of work to do around the electric grid, around trash mitigation. There's a lot of things DR needs to do. It's not like, hey, we're coasting toward it here, but I think there's a lot of progress toward it. There was another thought I had just now that popped in and out of my head. Oh, tourism. Tourism, obviously, Dominican Republic hit 11 million tourists or visitors last year. Let's call it the right thing. Visitors. That could be just people coming to visit family or whatever. Not everybody going to an all-inclusive resort. But still, 11 million versus 10 million the year before. Both were records for all-time records. 10 million was the most. Now 11 million is the most. I'm going to ask you if you're in Canada and you just heard about your prime minister stepping aside. Do you feel today more or less confident about the economic future of Canada with Trudeau's decision? Even in the United States, people hate Trump, and I get it. But do you feel more or less confident in the economic future of the United States? People who hate Trump are going to say less. It just is. But people who are like me, who it's like, I don't love Trump, I don't hate Trump, I can see the benefits of him, I can see the downside of him. I did go out, you can go back and watch it and say, Kamala Harris is a bad candidate. She can't win. I love, a real quick aside, I love in the comments how people are like, ooh, did you see that debate? Now what do you think, Jamie? This isn't aging well. And I'm like, just let's wait to the election. The gringo ended up being right. Trust El Gringo. She was not a good candidate is what I said then. And I also said, if you go back and watch that video, that she's the best thing that could happen for the United States, because when she's not elected, it will end woke and it will end globalism. It will end the globalist push, the establishment push. And boy, was the gringo right on this one. It's pretty good, actually. I just realized that. But anyway, the point I'm making is, if you are in the United States or Canada and you're seeing the movement toward reduced government, a movement toward anti-inflation measures, a movement away from establishment globalist tendencies that Trudeau and Biden and the like have brought in, your confidence is up. When your confidence is up, you're less inclined to hold. You're more inclined to spend. And what do people spend on? They spend on vacations. They spend on experiences. So think about that. We're in an era, in a moment where people are feeling more confident with their money and their future. As a result of that, they're more willing to spend, maybe go on that vacation they've been waiting to go on. You've got a country in the Dominican Republic that is hitting record numbers of visitors at the same time that they've signed agreements with the largest country in the region, the United States, to increase number of routes by air to the Dominican Republic. Aerojet is announcing flights to Miami and New York and San Juan, where they can reduce prices and increase competition. So you've got more confidence along with more competition for travel to this country. You see my point? Like, all speculative. I could be wrong. I will be wrong at some point. I haven't been yet, but I will be at some point. I could be wrong. But the point I'm making is, like, the DR is in this, like, really interesting, if you kind of interlock all these circles, there's like a center point between them. It's like more confidence, hot up and coming tourist destination, Four Seasons, W Hotel, Punta Bergantine, all these investments, these major projects. I mean, even like celebrity or well-known influencers like DJ Khaled, Vin Diesel, all these people that are like coming back and buying property. Mark Wahlberg. These are not dumb people, right? They have advisors. They have people that are looking at the situation and going like, not a bad place, politically stable, economically growing, booming real estate market. Yeah, great people, great culture, amazing weather. Like, there's a lot of elements here that are really, really sexy for the developed world to continue to invest in and come to. So anyway, so you look at all these things, and right in the middle of it sits like a couple of places. Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, could be Mexico, except the cartels make that feel unsafe. But there's only a few spots that are really at the epicenter of seeing the advantage of all that's happening in the world, and then politically have positioned themselves and economically have positioned themselves in the Dominican Republic specifically to ride that wave. So my take is that do your own due diligence. Don't go out and be like, oh man, he's right, I'm just gonna go buy stuff and spend all my money and drain my account. I'm confident, I've got 50 grand to my name, I'm just gonna dump it in the Dominican Republic. Do your due diligence. Always be smart about what you're investing in. Make sure it's not, this is still a speculative investment, the Dominican Republic. This is not I'm all in. This is okay, I'm going to get exposure to. I'm going to buy something there that, God forbid something happens, it'll suck, but I won't lose all of my life savings. But the Dominican Republic is uniquely positioned, folks, and I see this move, Justin Trudeau resigning, as an indication that populism has taken the world over. And the Dominican policy and the Dominican rhetoric and the Dominican president is more aligned with that. He has made really good moves strategically to partner more with the United States. He is not in a trade. He is in a trade deficit with the United States. The U.S. is not in a trade deficit with DR, and that's important because Trump hates trade deficits. He wants to kill countries where he sees a trade deficit. Look at the tariffs he wanted to impose on, or wants to impose on Canada, the tariffs on China. When he sees a trade deficit, even though DR is a small player, I know, but he's going to go after that country. The DR is in a trade deficit with the U.S., meaning the U.S. benefits from trade with the Dominican Republic. So already an ally, already a friend. Trump already came out and said how important the Dominicans were in the United States to his election, how important Dominican Americans are to the diversity and growth of the United States. Man, I think this is a moment. We'll see how this ages. I could be wrong. And I really love to know your thoughts. And keep it civil, by the way. There's people, it's funny, quick aside, I like asides. People comment sometimes forgetting that if they met me in person, they would never speak that way. Nor would I to anybody, right? Like, if you saw me on the street, you'd be like, oh, hey, man, nice to meet you. I love your stuff, or I like your stuff. I don't agree with it always. There's some things you say that I'm like, I'm not so sure, but I appreciate you putting yourself out there. But what people say in the comments is like, you're an idiot. You know, this is the stupidest take. Jamie, I'm never following you again because you uttered the word Trump and it wasn't followed by he's a jerk. You know, like, just stop. But open it up. Open up the dialogue. Tell me where I'm wrong. I am not. I mean, this has happened within 24 hours here. Like, I am not the most well-versed person on Dominican policy, on Canadian policy, on populism, on political trends. There are many of you out there that are in this. This is your world. This is your life. You're a political strategist, or you work in government. Want your take. Like, I look at my content as a community, not as just me spouting stuff from upon high. Like, this is just my thoughts, and I'd love to know yours. I truly would. Drop it down below. If you follow me for a while, you know that I am prone to responding to almost every comment that I can until it just gets away. Sometimes it's like, holy cow, this got overwhelming. But drop some comments below. I'd love to engage in discussion on this. But my take is that I think DR is uniquely positioned. I think this actually leads to an increase, absent a world event, an increase in the pace of growth in DR for the next year or two. Midterms in 2026 will be the indication of what's to come. Like, is it a continued run of populism because there's been success in the US and Canada in shrinking government and securing the border? Or does it flip-flop like it often does to like, we don't quite like the way it's going, so we're going to bring in, you know, more of a left-leaning Congress in the United States and whatever it is in Canada. That's my take. Love your thoughts. Drop it down below. I appreciate all of you following along. Be sure to subscribe. It helps me grow. My goal is 100,000 subscribers this year. So subscribing and putting it out there would be major for me. So I appreciate you all being along for the ride, and I'll see you on the next one.